Hello everyone and welcome to this Bank Holiday Monday episode of the Indo Sport podcast. I'm Will Slattery, sitting in for Joe Malloy today, and what else would we be discussing other than Gaelic football after a very busy weekend that saw 8 matches in the round robin series. But before we get to today's chat, a reminder that our GA coverage on the Indo Sport podcast is with thanks to AIB. AIB is at the heart of Gaelic games across both club and county, and in 2025 they're celebrating a decade of sponsoring the All-Ireland Senior Football Championships. With this year's championship shaping up to be one of the most competitive in years, AIB is more excited than ever to bring fans closer to the action. Check out #TheToughest for more. And now I'm delighted to be joined in studio by Philly McMahon. Philly, how are you?
I'm good. Well, all right.
You just about remembered it was a bank holiday, so I think...
Yeah. No, but it's more so that Dublin got beaten the weekend.
Yeah, well, we'll have plenty to get into in that Dublin Armagh match, and we're also on the line with Pat Spillane. Pat, how are you?
I'm very well, very well.
Probably.
Looking forward to it. It's nice to be in, I'm normally soldiering off Broadway with Will, with Michael Verney and Dick, so in the Indo GA podcast. So now I'm on the big stage where all the big stars are, so I'm really looking forward to it.
Well, yeah, so you're back on Broadway, but you know Joe Malloy, so you'll have to do maybe the understudy today, but it's kind
of... Well, you're sort of, like it's bank holiday, like an RT where Marty Morrissey seems to present every radio programme on bank holiday Monday. So you're doing the Marty Morrissey of the Indo Daily podcast.
Yeah, it's the bank holiday matinee show on Broadway,
Double pay, that's what it is.
I wish.
You, Bob, that's what it is.
I wish. Pat, but, isn't it great, Pat? I feel like we're coming in, it's been said a lot, energised and enthused about Gaelic football. It's a funny when we spend so much time over the last couple of years complaining about the format and the structure, and it's been voted out, and now I think some people might have seller's remorse. All of a sudden, the permutations, you almost need a PhD in sporting permutations to grasp what's on the line for round 3, but all of a sudden, there's a lot to play for across all the groups. Some groups, Armagh obviously seal top spot, but there's still a lot of moving and shaking for the other positions. Generally, I feel like all of a sudden, maybe because the product has kind of improved, the format has kind of come around in the end.
Well, do you know what? For 10 years, the last 10 years, I've been talking about Gaelic football, and it's been grim reporting on the games of Gaelic football because there was far more bad matches than good matches. And like in the latter years when I was working with the Sunday game, and you'd start to say, it was bad enough, it was grim enough to be working there at the best of times, but to have bad matches then and analyse, and you'd start to say, oh, geez. And suddenly... we have a new version of Gaelic football. And ever since I started with this podcast, I just feel energised. I've fallen back in love with Gaelic football. And everyone I meet at the games, every player I meet has fallen back in love with it. And every weekend, every Monday or Tuesday, I go on this podcast. It gets better and better. It keeps giving. It's the championship that keeps giving. And you saw so many highlights from the weekend. Armagh's performance in Croke Park, a Derry-Galway game, which was a real cracking, old-style, hard-hitting Gaelic football championship match. Some of the individual displays, 2-point shooting was unbelievable. Reno O'Neill's pint with the outside of the right foot from over 45 metres, brilliant. David Clifford being David Clifford, 1-8, absolutely magnificent. Some brilliant diving blocks, some great penalty saves, and yes, and this is typical, in the GA world. The old saying, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I have always felt, and Kieran McGeady, I talked about it last weekend because Kieran McGeady talked about it last weekend, and we're talking about this present format, which they're scrapping. The whiz kids in the GA are scrapping after this year. And again, okay, they talk about lack of jeopardy, and they talk about, there's nothing to play for, and blah, blah, blah. And I look at it, you're going into the last round, and 15 of the 16 counties have something to play for. Only Armagh are secure in top spot. So that means that every one of the 8 matches is a competitive game where there's something for the teams. Isn't that absolutely brilliant? And by the way, let's not forget the Tailteann Cup, which has been a revelation this year and is operating, like I said, a bit off Broadway, but we had a huge shock, Limerick beating Westmeath. We have Limerick and Wicklow topping 2 of the 4 divisions. We're getting great football. I was watching Kildare and Sligo. Kildare 15 points up and Sligo bring it back to 2 points. Great football in Tailteann Cup, great football in the championship. a great weekend for Gaelic football yet again. And, not often enough we should be shouting from the rooftops. Hurling Man is great, shouting about how great the game is. Now we can have an opportunity to say, Jesus, this game of Gaelic football, it's not bad at all.
Very much so. And as you say, so much to play for. I'll quickly spin through the 4 groups. Just I'm sure people maybe caught some matches, but maybe not them all. So in Group 1 at the weekend, we had Mayo doing as Mayo does, going and upsetting the odds in Tyrone, 217 to 113. They're back in business with a tough game to come against Donegal, who also bounced back with the big win over Cavan, 326 to 113. So all 4 teams are on 2 points going into the last round there. Donegal versus Mayo and Tyrone versus Cavan. So there's, any which way that could finish up. In Group 2, Kerry 128, Cork 20. Kerry are top of that group at the moment. Meath drew 21 points, 215 against Roscommon. So basically Kerry and Meath are shooting out for top spot in that group. Roscommon will play Cork in the last round to see who will come third. In Group 3, Monaghan and Down will, likewise in Group 2, will face off in the final round. Winner topping that group, and Louth and Clare will play for third spot after Down beat Louth 25 points. Sorry, Down and Monaghan, I should have said, we're top of that group. Down beat Louth 25 points to 24. Monaghan beat Clare 125 to 116. And in Group 4, as Pat said, Armagh have already secured top spot there after their 24 points to 19 win over Dublin at Croke Park yesterday. Derry drawing 220 to 414 against Galway, leaves them on a point each. Lots to play for. Armagh against Galway, Dublin against Derry. There's a lot of different ways that could shake out between second and fourth. So, yeah, a lot happening there. I hope I didn't kind of confuse everyone with going through those permutations, Philly. We'll start with Dublin Armagh, though. Armagh topping that group now with that 24 points and 19 win. A lot of people talking, I suppose, about Dublin's wides. I think I said 18. Pat corrected me. Actually, 17 only. Yeah. Some of the infractions that led to... a 1 point freeze and 2 point freeze. They lost by 5 and gave away 5 points worth of infractions and kicked 18 wide. So that alone, you'd think, were Dublin actually maybe closer than the scoreline suggested. But at the same time, Armagh did look quite comfortable and quite dominant in large parts. What's your kind of read of how that game played out?
Yeah, I agree. Armagh definitely looked comfortable. I just think Dublin, for some reason, when they're losing games, and again, it probably is an obvious thing, is their leaders are underperforming. When you have Conn, Kilkenny, Howard, Bugler, Scully to an extent, and Costello, when you see those boys shooting the scores that they can, it reverberates around to the younger lads and has a huge impact on the defence. I haven't seen Dublin this year being really, really good defensively with them not playing well. Right? So I know there's a lot to get your head around that, but I've never seen them, maybe a couple of lads, taking their shots when their efficiency being maybe good, but then the defence being really strong. I've never seen that. I think that's a challenge for Dublin right now, and they just their efficiency, the shot to score efficiency was so poor yesterday. And they started so well. It was one of those things. First 15 minutes, you're looking at it and going, "Wow, they are ripping Armagh apart here." The kicking ability, the space they had, and how they defended in the first 15 minutes, especially on top of the arc there, where they were getting numbers, turnovers, and go. And then it just, a good sign for Armagh is that they just settled them. Even though they had such a good purple patch at that start, it didn't feel like they'd done enough to get a bit of space on the score.
The wides were already racking up at that stage, and some simple wides.
Yeah, and they were simple wides. That's the issue. It's not that they weren't shooting in the right zones. It was the execution that you're just like, oh, come on, Whereas in years gone by, you would have had lads that would have said, hold on a second here, work the next pass, get the next score. Particularly towards the end of the game when they were taking so many, they were looking to claw back with so many 2-pointers. It needed someone experienced on the pitch to say, settle down, just let's keep the scoreboard ticking over here. Keep going for it. And then the noise, the crowd, the energy going from the last part of quarter 3 into quarter 4, then we can see what happens. But that never happened, and there was an inexperience of a rashness of shooting and then being open at the back. And the worrying thing is, if they play like that against Derry, the way Derry played against Galway, the grit that Derry showed, the fight, the aggression, the in your face, you're coming to our ground and you're not getting this easy and you might think you're going to get it. I was impressed by that in regards to that, and the likes of Glass, Rodgers, big leaders stepping up. I think they'll cause Dublin hassle if Dublin show up with that same energy in the next game.
Just the point you made about the rashness of the shooting, it's an interesting dynamic now in Gaelic football with the 2-pointer that, like, say in 2014 when Dublin lost to Donegal, and maybe towards the end of that game you were trying to maybe chase goals because you felt you were behind on the scoreboard, and maybe in other years you might have kept, as you say, the scoreboard ticking over. This time, instead of going for goals, it was 2-pointers. We need 2-pointers. We need to get that deficit down. And it did cause them to take on a lot of shots. And you're seeing this in other games as well. Like Galway towards the end of the Derry game probably took on a couple of 2-pointers, albeit they got a very fortuitous goal from one of them. It's that kind of a new, I suppose, dynamic in the game that people are chasing 2-pointers, and it's leading to these shots as well.
But there is an element of the game where, let's say Armagh, they were 4 scores up, no matter what. And the only really thing you can do is actually go for goal rather than 2-pointers or get 2 points. But at the end of the day, even Kieran Kilkenny taking the last shot, they knew it was done. It was over. They will obviously, it's an easy week or a couple of weeks of preparation for Dessie Farrell in that you need to get the shot efficiency up, the scoring efficiency up, You need, and they were actually... Pater O'Coffey-Bourne was really good around the middle. I think he won 50% of his ball. That was, big long kickouts. But he also broke a lot of the other 50% into Dublin players. So, but it was the other problem.
The kick out in the first half.
They struggled with.
It was that kind of second quarter. Dublin barely could get out of their half.
Yeah, but it was. That's what I'm saying. He was good in regards to winning his own battle. But then it was the others around the midfield that weren't. It was the breaking ball. There was balls hit on top of Kilkenny. Normally you've Con out there. That's an unbelievable ball winner. When you've Con, Howard and Kilkenny out there and O'Coffey-Bourne there, you have a good strong middle. And they're not that tall, but they're good ball winners in the year. They just didn't have that.
Pat, what's your perspective on how things played out? Obviously Dublin's, the wide count is such a thing that jumps off the page. But Armagh did, after that first quarter, really show a lot of grit. Dominated Dublin's kick out. It felt like Dublin didn't get into the Armagh half for the last 15 minutes almost of that first half, where Armagh pulled away in the scoreboard, and a 4-point lead at the break felt fairly daunting for Dublin to come back from. And obviously Armagh stretched it out in the third quarter. From there, like what?
Well, the one thing about this brilliant football championship, and Kerry accepted, is that all the top teams, the one common denominator is that they've been consistently inconsistent. I mean, the last day after Dublin beat Galway, we were saying, they're back again. They're going to be favourites for the All-Ireland. Brilliant performance. Armagh were poor against Donegal in the Ulster final. Could have conceded 5 goals against Derry in the last round and conceded no goal against Dublin. So you're writing no team off. None of the top counties are not writing them off at the moment. So let's look at Dublin. And remember the famous quote from Donald Rumsfeld, and he talked about unknown unknowns. We don't know. And there are known unknowns. Some things we don't know at all. But there are known knowns. And what are the known knowns? The things we do know. And they're the things that are blindingly obvious for Dessie this weekend. And it points to 2 things in particular. And they're known knowns which can be worked on. And you're talking about shooting efficiency. Now, the shooting efficiency was absolutely... And when you drill deep into their stats, would you believe it or not, Dublin got off 38 shots, which was 9 shots more than Armagh. That's number one. They kicked 17 wides, and they put 4 into the goalie's hands, right? So that's awful shooting. And then you talk about their 2-point shooting. And Dublin, unlike the likes of Kerry or Galway, Dublin don't have really a lot of 2-point or really good 2-point shooters. Now, they got no 2-point score against Galway, but they did score 3 points. But then you look at the 2-point shots, and Philly was alluding to a lot of those 2-point efforts. They were chasing the game, they were forcing the shot, and they were low percentage shots. Dublin took 9 2-point shots last week and scored 3. That's a 33%. So, right, Dessie knows the known, the first known can be simply worked on. It's practice, improving the shooting. The second known is the technical breaches. They were done for 4 technical breaches, 3 in the second half, 1 in the first half from a mark, and 5 points. Armagh got 5 points out of those 4 technical breaches. What was the difference in score between the 2 teams at the end? 5 points. So Desi knows what he has to work on. He knows the known knowns. And I would agree with Philly. I thought their performance in the first quarter, I thought it was forward play at its very best. I remember when I was playing, and now I know what the word, I'd close my eyes for a half an hour going to the game. And I'd close my eyes and I'd imagine what's going to happen for me as a forward. Now, of course, they have a word for it, it's called visualization. But I can tell you, I used to close my eyes for that half an hour in a car or in the bus. And all I was imagining was, first out, ball being delivered in. First out, catch the ball, sidestep to the left, turn to the right. And that was the sort of beautiful football that was happening. The ball was coming in first time from the likes of Scully and them. Dublin forwards out in front, turning, shooting. It was football at its very best. But in the second half, after that first quarter, the tempo, the energy went from the Dubs, and they were poor. And I look at the team, and you start to say, right, what are the worries? Okay, obviously there was no con, so that's a caveat. But I look at the team, the starting 15, the last day, and I look at two inexperienced players in the full back line. I see an inexperienced centre field, and Larkin O'Dell, I'm not too sure, is he a starting forward? Then you look at, right, the forwards, the subs impact from the bench in terms of forwards. Luke Branagh came on, and I'm not too sure, like, you looked at the exact opposite in with Armagh, and Armagh had impact from the bench. And that was the difference in the end. Armagh have a strong panel. They're amazing me because how adaptable they've been under the new rules, because they're obviously a very well coached team. They're very adaptable. They tick all the boxes for the modern game: physicality, athleticism, strong running. Now they have some nice young players being added to the mix and a good impact from the sub. So is that everything lost for the Dubs? No, but to be beaten well in their home patch in Croke Park, yes, a big worry. And a big match, a win or bust match against Derry, which will be in a neutral venue.
Yeah, Dublin Derry potentially in Clownless would be a brilliant game in a couple of weeks' time. Yeah, just on that opening quarter, like as you say, I think Dublin were 6-3 ahead, motoring well up front, having kicked some poor wides. Rory Grugan goes and kicks 1-2 pointer. All of a sudden, 6-5. Dublin's advantage after that great opening quarter has basically been wiped out in its entirety.
Actually, sorry, 1 second, while I'm on because we talk about the importance of the kick-out, and Philly was alluding to Paddock Coffey-Burton. But the kick-outs, I think the kick-out stats from the Dubs, I think they retained 50% of their kick-outs. But at one stage in the second half, they lost 9 kick-outs in a row that Armagh hit them for 5 points. And in the modern game, if you're winning kick-outs, you're building momentum and you're on top.
You've talked a lot about the kick-out rules and your kind of dissatisfaction with them, but how did you feel like the kickouts went from a Dublin perspective? A lot of people were honing in on maybe Stephen Cluxton or the options he had, because as I said in that first half in particular, Armagh really got on top and got a lot of change out of it. What were you kind of seeing? Because Armagh, in contrast, Ethan Rafferty was kind of been able to find his men with a little more ease.
Take out the new rules and Dublin would be extremely strong with those players I've mentioned around the kick out. O'Callaghan, Kilkenny, Howard, and some of the half forwards running onto the ball. With the new rules, Dublin only had one midfielder really, and that midfielder has only really found his feet a little bit the last 2 games. Has only come into the squad to nail his jersey really in Covic-Bourne. So Dublin played yesterday with one midfielder, and then the hope was that they would get joy from Kilkenny in the air and possibly Howard. And a couple of different kind of, they had a really good kick out in the first. It was the first half where I think it was maybe Davy Bourne ran in off in the middle of the pitch. I don't know who was doing the co-coms, copped it, but it was a really good kick out. So maybe they need to go back to the drawing board if they don't have that armoury around the middle, because that's what you need now. You need 2 big options and you need other players around that. But yeah, I just think it's one of those things now that it's, Armagh definitely went after them up in Armagh in the league and destroyed them in the first half. And I'm sure they would have said, look, this worked for us against them, but we have to go after it a little bit more. And it just, the energy momentum was huge for me. When you are moving the ball at speed, at fast, like if you can get that ball up the pitch in 2 or 3 passes, like Kerry did against Cork a lot, if you can get the ball up the pitch really fast, the percentage of you getting a shot off and possibly a score is high. And it also drains the energy off the middle third of the pitch of your opposition. So when they attack then you're getting turnovers and you're kind of building and you're attacking again, and you're basically building. That's momentum in GAA for me. And once that stops and the opposition get hold of the game and they get a purple patch, the quicker you can get that back, the better. And they didn't have that. They didn't have, even when there's times I feel when Dublin have momentum and you'll have players slowing it down. Like there was a phase there where I feel Dublin were on top and I think it was Kilkenny, Dublin were on the attack, put his hand up to slow it down. And I'm just like, you have the momentum, keep going at them, keep putting them under pressure.
Hand in the air was a familiar
You've
thing.
seen it all over the country now, like, but it's for me, it's when you can sniff that you're dangerous and that they're weak, keep going till it gets to the stage where you've built a massive lead that you're putting questions into their head. And that's what happened over the years for us. You know, you have to put doubt in the opposition's head, and every time you don't bridge that gap, you know, make that gap bigger, then you're letting the opposition come back in and you're giving them hope. And as you said, all it takes now is a 2-pointer for the team to go, right, we're back in here now, particularly at certain times of the game. You talk about Gruben's 2-pointer. And that in ill discipline in terms of the infractions was huge. Because any momentum you've built is just gone because of a silly little mistake.
And what impressed you about Armagh, like, you know, Rian O'Neill coming back in from the start, he kicked 2 unbelievable 2-pointers, got another 2-point free. You know, Rory Grugan, as I mentioned, he was very impressive throughout. Like, got a really good strip of Paddy O'Cuffey burn towards the end of the game, even though probably wouldn't have been the deciding factor, but he was kind of all over the place.
Honestly, it's hard to read Armagh that game, and you might say the opposite. Like, but for me, if Dublin, again, sorry for harping on about, if Dublin's efficiency rate goes up there, then you could start to kind of go, right, okay, where's Armagh at? Like, you know, they weren't overly impressive against Derry. They were in second gear against Dublin, let's be honest. But yeah, they have a strong squad. The players coming off the bench, Soupy Campbell coming off the bench gives you that edge. Don't really get that with Dublin, right? You don't really get there's not that much coming in off the bench. Brannock was good in the league, but probably hasn't shown much after that. O'Dell, I like O'Dell, Pat. I know you don't. You're saying he's probably not.
No, but I don't think he's the starting forward.
Yeah, well, I'm not sure. Like he gives you a dynamic that I think these rules need, and I think a lot of teams have, which is these little jinky forwards that I mentioned there last week. He gives you that, but he definitely wasn't on it. That's the key. He wasn't on it. He was on it against Galway. I think Pascal was off it again. Unfortunately, his shooting was bad. But he gives you that dynamic going forward that he can carry the ball. But ultimately, Dublin have seen that they can play a certain way like they used to play, which is get the ball, move it fast, transition fast, win the kick out. You don't win the kick out, try to get the opposition, turn them over inside your own 45 and attack and keep going. But they just didn't keep going, and I didn't see real leadership. I didn't see someone going, right, you know, let's, you know, take our scores here, let's slow it down in regards to trying to get the game back by shooting. Just hold on a second here. Like, and the opposite happened when they had the momentum where lads were slowing it down.
Pat, it's fascinating to see what Armagh do now. Like, they've topped the group with a game to spare. I think it's 4 weeks until the quarterfinals. So what way do you think Kieran McGeeney ought to approach this Galway game in 2 weeks? You have the opportunity of eliminating an All-Ireland rival, but at the same time...
Absolutely. I think it's important to keep momentum, and keeping momentum means keep winning games. It builds confidence, and there's an awful lot to, like I said, to admire about Armagh. One of the failings of that a lot of reigning champions make is that the following year we go with the same team, we go with the same tactics, and that's not happening with Armagh this year. You know, they've introduced some new faces. Young McMullen at wing forward is a really exciting addition. Under the new rules, they've really moved with the new rules in the sense that the way they're using Jolly Burns coming from deep as a halfback, as an attacking halfback. McQuillan is a superb attacking halfback, breaking the lines, which is very important for the modern game. They have power, they have pace. And remember, this is an Armagh team that are missing Aaron McKay. We're missing Oisin O'Neill last week, and Aidan Farker's out injured. They're 3 big players for them. But I would agree with like, would I be saying, oh geez, they're going to win the All-Ireland, they're going to retain the All-Ireland? I can find flaws in them. This zonal defending in the first half, Dublin were just finding pockets of space and exploiting it. I'm not too sure. Remember, this was an Armagh defence that Derry probably should have scored 5 goals. Did score 2, but 5. And the other thing about it, I'm just looking at last week, they dominated the game, winning in third gear. They created they scored no goal. Had 2 goal chances, which they probably should have taken. So there's hope for everyone, but they need to keep momentum. But certainly, the target was on the back as All-Ireland champions. They were All-Ireland champions under the old rules, and they're still just as impressive under the new rules. So serious threat, serious team, but still question marks.
Yeah, and as I said, they play Galway in the final game in that group. Dublin will be playing Derry. So it'll be very interesting to see what happens. They'll be throwing in at the same time in 2 weeks' time, so lots to play for there. Pat, you mentioned earlier the Derry-Galway game that threw in before Dublin Armagh. Derry 220, Galway 414, an absolute belter, end-to-end, plenty of goals, plenty of drama. Galway scoring 2 goals, similar to the one they got against Dublin, just kind of ball bouncing around. It just somehow finds its way into the net. They're kind of getting experts in that field. While Derry and Galway, though, Pat, were playing out that great game, RTE 2 were showing David Attenborough's Jurassic Sea Monster. So not exactly maybe what GA fans were hoping for. We're used to getting double headers in that time slot, but David Attenborough's Jurassic Sea Monster unfortunately took precedence.
I know. Look, I know. This is like my weekly rant spot now, and it's television again. Look, right. Everyone knows that I'm the way the split season is formatted at the moment is wrong. It needs tweaking. Too many games, too many competitions in a short space of time. Competitions and games aren't getting the publicity, aren't getting the promotion they deserve. And that brings us, you're right. So if we're to the television. So last weekend, not this weekend, last weekend, there was no Gaelic Football Championship match free to air. And remember, Armagh, the All-Ireland champions, were playing Derry in a full packed house in Armagh. You could have said, right. So you look at this weekend. So, right. No Lee McCarthy this week. None of the top counties playing at Armagh. 16 football championship games. And one match, Dublin Armagh at 4 o'clock on Sunday, free to air. And you're right. So Sunday, by the way, also All Creatures Great and Small was on RT1, and Super Garden, which was a repeat, was on 2. Rossnaroon was on TG Car. So, right, that would, you'd say, well, fuck it, lads, we could nearly fit in a second game RT on Sunday. And then you start to say, right, don't get me started. So you go to Saturday, where there was cracking games on Saturday, and we say, right, let's, 7 o'clock Saturday evening, peak TV viewing time, let's put Kerry and Cork on at 7 o'clock. Let's show Tyrone and Mayo free to air. But Jesus Christ, for the 154th episode, we had Killinascully on RT2 at that time. And remember, the last time Killinascully was recorded was, I think, 17 years ago. So, like, we've got to fill up Killinascully. And, like, so, right, I mean, we're not doing enough to promote the games. RT are failing in their duty. The J are failing in their duty not to be showing those games. And then RT showed... and the Saturday night game in Saturday night. Now, holy God, lads, if anyone was watching that from start to finish, they deserve an All-Ireland medal. The programme started at 10 to 11 and it finished at close to 25 past 12 on Sunday morning. Holy God. And like, they did it on the cheap, they did it on the fly, no video analysis, no VT pieces, just the 3 boys talking in Healy Park and home. Like, we deserve a lot better than that. And sorry, and I know on RT2, the Champions League final was on. But Christ, that finished at 10 to 10. Now, that was an hour until the football. And with all due respects to Kevin Doyle and Stephen Kelly and Richie Sadler, I don't think the nation were going to be gripped by the 3 boys analysis of a one-sided Champions League. So we're falling down. We're cutting off our nose to spite our face. We have brilliant matches. We're not showcasing them. We're not promoting them. And we should have more matches on free to air. Rant over.
I knew bringing up Attenborough's Jurassic Sea Monster would get us good content.
That was a repeat as well.
I'd kill the Scully over Cork and Kerry game all day. Definitely.
Yeah. Maybe there might be some other people out there who agree with you. But in terms of Derry and Galway, then Philly as a match, Galway's championship hopes were hanging by a thread, to say the least. They were down by 6 and 7, then 8 at various stages. It was going back and forth, and then like they kind of come with a goal, a 2-pointer, and then this wild 2-pointer that's going out of play. Fair play to John Maher, gets a fist. It's bouncing around. Matthew Tierney gets another fist, and all of a sudden they're leading. Derry go down and get a draw to live to fight another day. But compelling? Were you hoping for more from Galway? Were you impressed with Derry? Like, how do you shake that one out?
I said at the beginning that Derry was going to upset somebody in this group. I think everybody wrote them off, and just the way they are as a county, I just said to myself, you know what, someone's going to get caught here. Like, they hadn't won a championship match this year. They've struggled in the league, but they really showed the kind of little bit of fight and grit that they had previous, that was putting them up to the top table at one stage. But in saying that, they also showed that they were desperate to get over the line, and they didn't see the game out. And I think on 2 occasions McKinless came out of his goal with a kind of a crossfield ball, and it ended up on the far post, and I'm just shouting at him, stay in goal, stay in goal. And that game would have been over, and Derry would have been, do you know what, that would have really given them a bit of a spark to their season, I suppose, and particularly going in against Dublin, So the draw didn't do them good, but they still have something to fight for. Galway, on the other hand, were very lucky. I definitely think there was a bit of complacency, and there was stages I thought, and maybe they thought, that they'll get into this game, and it just wasn't happening for them. The gap was getting more and more, but they didn't give in. In fairness to them, they showed a lot of character to keep fighting. Cormac comes on and catches a couple of really good balls in, causes a bit of havoc in the Derry defence. I think, again, I'm so impressive with the character of Glass and Rogers. Like, they're two players I would love to have on my team.
1-6 between them.
They just are war horses. Like, they don't stop, And in fairness, again, they're like Dublin. Once them two step up, there's generally an effect around the whole group, And you just wonder if Tally had a bit more time. If he didn't start so late in the year, would he had time to build on things? And
you would have had more time if you withdrew your candidacy earlier. Maybe you would have
been
able to get in a couple of weeks in advance.
But you'd wonder, they showed some really good stuff there, and maybe that'll carry them into the Dublin game.
Yeah, I can't wait for that Dublin game. I really hope it's in Clones as well. I just think that would just be a great day out. And Pat, all of a sudden for Galway, they go from the verge of being eliminated from the championship. They get that kind of miracle goal. Now they play an Armagh team who are already through, and I know you were saying you think Armagh should go full-blooded, but even if they do, in the back end of Armagh's mind, they don't need the win. So Galway, all of a sudden, of the three teams, Galway, Dublin, Derry, are arguably in the best position going into the last round.
Actually, if I can recall, Galway and Armagh played in the last round last year, round 3. It was up in Sligo, and I think Armagh equalised with the last play of the game, if I can remember.
They played the year before in the last round as well, and Armagh won by a point. So it's 3 years in a row.
Each other, yeah.
Now there were two teams, there were two counties last week, Derry and Galway, that were both coming in on the back of poor performances, possibly in the previous game. I mean, Derry hadn't won a game in this year's championship. They won no game in this year's league. But what I like about, and I know Paddy Tally came in late, so it was that difficult task of reorganising a team. Paddy Tally was renowned for his defensive system setups, and it has to be a new defensive system now under the new rules. And he's also, without Conor McCluskey, arguably their best defender. But what I like about them, they're playing for Tally. They're showing great character. They were 13 points down against Armagh. It looked like game over, but they brought it down to 4 points, and should have, like I said earlier on, should have scored more goals. I thought Glass was just, Rogers, yes, but Glass was just magnificent. The sort of warrior you want in any team. And then, a draw, they should have won it. They deserved to win it. They didn't. And then you look at Galway, who on the back of a very disappointing performance against Dublin, in Celtic Park, against a really psyched up, aggressive, in-your-face, hard-hitting Derry team. And in fairness, credit to Niall Cullen, the referee. He left the two teams play. And, sometimes we're complaining about some of the championship matches this year that they're a bit like basketball. They're shootouts and there's no intensity, there's no physicality. There was great physicality. But what I liked about Galway last week, 8 points down, they showed great character. And at the end of the day, lads, and we look at Mayo kicking at the end of the day, you kick the ball into the edge of the square and hey presto, there's a chance of scoring. The last 2 kicks into the edge of the square by Galway, and they got a goal and a pint and equalise. Mayo were kicking the ball into Indo Sport into the square. So we talked about Dublin's kicking game in the first 15 minutes. Kerry's kicking game for kicking is where it's at under the new rules. And if you have a good kicking team and a team that's prepared to move the ball quick and fast, you're going to win a lot of matches.
So as I said, Armagh topped that group. If Dublin beat Derry, Galway might not even have to beat Armagh. It would come down to scoring difference, and if Dublin win by a certain score, like Galway could still qualify in third position. So it's hard to exactly know how that one will shake out, but it's a very exciting finish, albeit obviously Armagh having that top spot makes it a little less bite in that Galway game. We'll move on to probably the most surprising result of the weekend, Philly. Mayo going to Tyrone and winning 217 to 113, so winning well in the end. Obviously, they had that shock defeat to Cavan that wasn't televised, so people were kind of like doing a double take when they saw the score. Then obviously Kevin McStay had to step away for health reasons. We wish him all the best. Stephen Rochford stepping up, obviously plenty of inter-county experience there. Tyrone having beaten Donegal, and then obviously after their 20s winning, there was a great sense that maybe they're dark horses, or maybe even not even dark horses anymore, to go on a run. And then Mayo go to Healy Park and kind of thoroughly dominate. They were leading by 8 at half time. What they ended up winning by 7. So like
similar patterns. Like, you see Dublin beating Galway, then getting beaten by Armagh. You see, you look at Mayo just, like, obviously Tyrone beating Donegal was a big one, and then just flat when they play against Mayo, and the same with Dublin against Armagh. Like, so there's these waves that these teams are having, and Pat mentioned inconsistency. We're seeing it across a few teams, and the ones that are sticking out, the ones that are consistent, which the top 2 for me is Armagh and Kerry. They're consistent. Now Kerry haven't really had a huge challenge yet, but they have to play what's in front of them. But they're consistent, and for me, what I liked about Mayo was that it showed a bit of an emotional energy in around McStay stepping aside, go out and fight for something a bit bigger than yourself. Your manager's not well at the minute. He said to stepping aside, give him a bit of energy by getting a result here today in the performance, and that's what they did. Tyrone, for me, are probably one of the most frustrating teams at the minute in the championship, because they've got so much talent, and they just are hot and cold consistently. Like, they were so good against Donegal, and then they, like Dublin, they were just frustrating. The performances are frustrating, but they've got such quality within their ranks, and I'm not even talking about the next couple of years. They'll be strong because of what they've achieved at 20s and minor. But I just feel those, if you were looking at those teams, Dublin, Galway and Tyrone, the missing part really is the inconsistency. How can you get consistent performance? How can you get them up to certain standards and keep them at those standards consistently? And they will be at the end of the season there in regards to fighting for an All-Ireland. But I just don't see it in them in terms of the inconsistency. Just
in terms of Mayo, Aidan O'Shea was very prominent, I thought.
Don't know now.
Absolutely.
I don't know. Yeah.
He was my man of the match.
I don't have the stats there, Pat, so you might have them. I know you're a big fan of him. So do you have stats on how we played well?
I'll tell you this. Do you know what I mean? Look, we've been very critical of Mayo, and they've received huge criticism, the players, the management, over the last couple of weeks. A lot of it deserved, a lot of it certainly undeserved. So what you wanted last week from Mayo players and that was a reaction, and you got the reaction. There was leaders all over the field. They brought energy. They brought huge work rate. I liked a couple of things about them. They brought, like, one of the big criticisms against Cavan was that build-up play, their attacking play was slow and bounces. Last week, we had the traditional hard-running game, but they also had a kicking game. They had nice variety to their kicking game. They played Aidan O'Shea at the end of the square and hit them with some lovely diagonal ball. Paddy Durkin was back after a long injury. Absolutely superb. But, their press, their high press was brilliant. Their work rate, their energy. But I thought at the end, the last 20 minutes, in all the big games over the years, it was always game management that cost Mayo. And with 20 minutes to go, Tyrone had brought the game back to 1 point. You said, oh, they'll crack. But they didn't. They showed great composure, great management. I was delighted for them. And I swear to God, I haven't the stats in Aidan O'Shea, but I thought he was immense. My admiration for him knows no bounds. I think he's a warrior. He's a leader. He's very much a team player. He's very unselfish. I thought he was superb last week. I thought they got the man marking on McCurry and Canavan. They got those man marking jobs on. And you look at stats, and the only stats I have in the game is that, like, at the end of the day, Tyrone, who have some, like I said, class forwards, they got 7 scores from playing the entire game, 1-6. That's fairly miserable. The kickouts from Morgan, yet again, when he went long, 11 long kickouts, they lost 3. And Mayo had 29 shots. Tyrone had 17 shots. That's the story of the game in a nutshell. But well deserved. I was thrilled for Mayo, really thrilled for them. They deserved a bit of good news and a positive story that now they did their talking on the pitch. Well done.
Do you agree with Pat's assessment of Aidan O'Shea there?
I think Mayo stood out as a team. I don't think there was a huge amount of players that you could kind of identify and go, oh, they were unreal. If I was picking man of the match, I'd be going, Jesus, who am I picking here? But as a team, they were very good. I think Tyrone were poor. Yeah. So that helps, and that's not taken away from Mayo's performance, because I'm saying they were actually really good collectively. Yeah. And yeah, Durkin coming in is a big bonus for them, because they were struggling to have that kind of, what they were really good at over the years, even against us, was that they were building from the back at speed, and having those players having Durkin coming in, who was, he had a bit more separation than he did the previous game. But I don't. If I'm reflecting right now on the game, I'm saying, did Aidan O'Shea stick out? I'm kind of thinking, getting a few hand passes, linking play, which is what he's good at. What else did he do?
Target man, won a lot of primary possession.
Yeah,
won the kick out.
He won but
Jeez, how many more pieces of evidence you need?
Stick me in there, and I'll be able to be a target man for you. I'll get a ball.
I agree with Philly. I mean, look, there was no one individual, so even though Paddy Durkin's 3 points was absolutely superb, and it was very much a team effort. But what was the one thing, and Philly will know, and anyone who has played against Tyrone, they're a horrible team to play on, because they bring so much energy, so much aggression, so much in your face. And after the brilliant performance in Ballybofey the previous, they turned up in Healy Park, their own pitch, the week after a big victory over Donegal, the week of a brilliant All-Ireland under-20, and they came with no tempo, no energy, and just a completely flat, subdued performance. Now, that's a worry for any manager.
Yeah, I suppose it kind of reminds me when Donegal lost to Cork in the second round last year. Like Tyrone playing Cavan in their final game, potentially did they think if we beat Cavan, we have a very strong chance of topping the group? Would that subconsciously maybe have taken the temperature down a notch in their preparations? Maybe not, but you're looking at the fixture list, it's only human to have one eye on what's to come. But the results, so Donegal in the other game in that group, 326, Cavan 113. That means all teams have 2 points, the only group where every team has won a game going into the final round. So literally any team could finish any position going into the last round, which is very exciting. Donegal, Mayo and Tyrone, Cavan. Donegal, Mayo in particular jumps off the page there, so that'll be a really great final day as well. Pat, we'll get to Kerry. We've kind of mentioned them a couple of times indirectly, but they were 128 to 20 point winners in Porky Queeve. 3 points down at half time as well, albeit there was a very strong wind in that first half. But Cork had a couple of goal chances. Shane Ryan had to make a couple of really nice saves to keep Cork out there. So Cork could have maybe had a few more scores on the board, but then Kerry really getting on top. To win by 11 and trail by 3 at half time kind of shows you how dominant they were in the second half. What did you make of their overall performance? And how do you feel they're at, considering, as Philly mentioned earlier, they haven't had to play some of the calibre of teams some of the other challengers have?
Well, it's nice to keep the best wine to last. So we're talking about yet again the only undefeated team in the championship. Yeah, it was an interesting performance. Like when you're a Kerry supporter, you always beat yourself up, because we're looking for. Kerry supporters are the most demanding. Paddy was right, they're effing animals or whatever like that. But because we're demanding, Kerry supporters want the perfect performance. But Nirvana, paradise, it doesn't exist. The perfect 70-minute performance has never been produced by a team. So we're looking at the good and the bad, and we're looking at what the bad things. And the defence in the first half, they were opened up. When Cork ran at them down the centre, they were opened up. Cork possibly could have scored 5 goals. There's certainly a problem with injuries. The injury list is mounting up, and as Philly knows, I mean, when you miss a couple of key players, you can be in trouble. Diarmuid O'Connor out for another match at least. I said Paddy Clifford, Barry Dan's season could be over. Paul Ganey went off injured. Injuries will be a problem, but like I said, look, and there's always the worry that Kerry haven't tested. They're playing no Division 1 team, and this year's no team out that have been operating in Division 1. But you can only beat what's in front of you, and their scoring stats are amazing. And you're looking for some differences. Last week they didn't get the goals; they only got 1 goal. But what they did get in return, they scored more 2-pointers last weekend than any other county. They scored 7 2-pointers. And I just look at their stats. In 4 games, they're averaging 30 points a game. 11.87 in 4 games, averaging 30 points. And their average winning margin is over 13 points. And while you think of the forwards and the lovely kicking game, and yes, we alluded to the fact that the defence were opened up. In the 4 championship games so far, Kerry have conceded 1 goal. In their last 3 championship games, they've conceded no goal. So the great thing... at times in the second quarter, they were poor. Cork got ahead of them, but one handy and still things to work on. And they're progressing nicely. I'm not a betting man, but at the moment, albeit against weak opposition, they're probably the foreign team in the country. And I would agree with Philly, probably Armagh are second. But like I said, it changes every week.
And they play Meath in the final round, winner tops that group. Kerry will be strong favourites there. Are Kerry the top team for you at the moment?
If you are Armagh, Donegal, at the minute I would put them 2 up there from watching them a good bit with Kerry.
Did he say Kerry's 1? Sorry, I didn't get that.
Say that again.
Kerry number 1?
Kerry be at the top table with Armagh and Donegal, definitely.
Number 1?
But the rest of the...
Philly,
he wants to direct. Pat wants to direct down.
They haven't won out
Philly,
yet.
you're
Pat,
sitting on the fence. You're sitting on the fence, Philly.
I'm absolutely not. They haven't won out yet. But basically...
They won the National Football League.
No, in regard... Yeah, but they haven't won the All-Ireland yet. It's still on.
No,
chill out, will you? I know you expect so much down in Kerry, but basically, if you want to catch Kerry cold, it's getting them when they come out of the group.
Yeah.
Quarterfinals.
Yeah, so if you're a Dublin and any of your, if Dublin get through, or any of those kind of teams that are not at the top table, you want to, if you're going to get Kerry, you want to get them just as they come out of that group, because they will have injuries and they will be, their sparring partners won't be as strong. So, but if they get momentum, I'd find it very hard to see somebody beating them.
Because if Kerry get to the quarterfinals, having beaten, say, Meath, Roscommon and Cork in the round robin, they could, as you said, they could play Donegal potentially, depending on how it shakes out. They could play Dublin or Galway. Because Tyrone will probably beat Cavan. So if Donegal beat Mayo, Tyrone have the head-to-head there. So if they were to face either of those 3 teams, having not really been facing a test, that is interesting. You would have, in your time with Dublin, had fairly straightforward Leinster Championships a couple of occasions, maybe had more difficult quarterfinals than others. How did you deal with that?
You just have to basically go after your own standards. So if you the previous year have won an All-Ireland, let's say, that definitely helps you because you're at the top table. But then it moves, okay? So, but if you have your score efficiency rate, your kick-out rate, your defensive structures, or your KPIs, and you know what they are, then basically you have to beat them in the following year. So if you're up the top then and you're trying to beat yourself, well then you've some sort of a guide, but it's not exact science. So Kerry, I'm sure, would be saying to themselves, right, here's the numbers that we have from the games that we've played in the groups, but we need to be a bit above where it's this, whatever the stats they have, and that's really all you can do. And you can hope that your preparation is really, really good.
The A versus B games,
all those things, but you'll only get a real reflection of if your preparation was good based off the performances you have in those games. So it's a kind of, you're blinded a little bit, but if you look at Dublin right now, they're looking at score efficiency rate, kickouts, all those type of things to get better. But if you have those things working really well, well then you're still trying to get better at them, but at a higher level. Whereas the other teams like Dublin, let's say, are looking at plugging the holes in terms of those areas that they need to get after. If you're Kerry and those things are already good, then you just keep making them better and better and better. So instead of looking at who you have to an extent coming down the line. It's how do you keep getting better and improving your performances yourselves, and then you obviously do your homework in your position as well. Obviously.
Yeah, Pat, am I right in saying that one year you and your teammates got a bye straight into the Munster final? So you would have had to make sure you're peaking for. I presume it was Cork you played that year, but you wouldn't have had much lead time to get ready for that one.
Yeah, but just when men were men, serious football was being
handing out medals then.
You played 3 matches to win All Ireland
instead of these fancy dans nowadays. No,
he used to go for points at half time.
Yeah, it's an interesting question because. Like, which is best? Really, a lot of hard matches that could take its toll, energy-wise, or injuries-wise, or a nice, easy run. And there's no doubt about it. I Kerry the last 2 years, particularly last year. I mean, Kerry, no different than this year. Kerry cruised through Munster, cruised through the playoffs. And last year, if you can remember, they faced Derry in the quarter-final in what was the ugliest football match of all time. And Kerry were there for the taking, but Derry hadn't a game plan to actually beat them. Then it went to the semi-final when they played Armagh. And with all due respects, I mean, Kerry threw it away. Kerry were in the driving seat, and suddenly a drop ball from Shane Ryan. Armagh got momentum, and Armagh deservedly beat them. Were Kerry road tested for those matches? No, they weren't. The easy run-up didn't help, so it'll be interesting. I think I remember with us, under Mick O'Dwyer, it was the backs and forwards, the A versus B, but in particular, backs and forwards. So I'd be marking Paddy O'Shea, and God forbid, I mean, you marking Paddy O'Shea in a backs and forwards in Killarney 3 and 4 nights a week. Jesus, that prepared you against any back you were going to face in the championship. You were battle ready, battle hardened, and that was what made the difference. Now, Jack is no fool, because this is probably going to be Jack's last year as Kerry manager, and he wants to bow out winning the title. So no stone is being left unturned. He will know that last Saturday's performance was about a B. There's a lot of improving to do, but I think that they are improving. They're getting the right way. But you're right. Facing Donegal or some crowd in a quarter-final, a banana skin.
You mentioned Jack O'Connor earlier. Just lastly on the Kerry game, Pat, like himself and John Cleary speaking afterwards, both had problems with the application of the 50-metre penalty for the midfield mark, and then the opposition player kind of not getting out of the way immediately. Some of the ones in that game did feel very, very harsh. I thought the two managers spoke a lot of sense afterwards. I don't know how you feel about it.
Absolutely. I mean, and like I said, I've been a huge supporter of the new rules, but that doesn't mean that they're the bee's knee, that there is problems. One, I still don't agree with the 2 pints being awarded for free. I think it's wrong. But there are major issues in relation to the Sint rule, and particularly after the mark, because what's happening is the player who has won the mark is in a lot of cases deliberately running into the nearest opposition and buying a 50-metre free. Secondly, I don't think it's a fair. I think it's a harsh punishment to be brought up 50 metres. That's number one. Number two, you have 2 guys aggressively going for a ball, and suddenly one guy wins the ball, and the other guy's aggression must suddenly be switched off, and he must step back. It's just not practical. It's not workable. It's wrong. It needs changing. And I would urge Jim Gavin and his colleagues to have a look at that dissent rule, have a look at that rule in relation to the mark, and have a look at the 2-point free, which are, I think, all wrong.
I think
the only thing is it definitely comes down to the ref's discretion. If the ref needs to be at a stage where he says, no, hold on a second, there's nothing in that, play on, or if it's obvious, bring it, but bringing it forward that much, where it becomes a score, I don't think it should be. I think it should be right. Okay, bring it forward a small bit, but not all the way in.
Yeah, because in the Dublin game there was a fairly obvious obstruction after a midfield mark that I was like, okay, he is kind of grabbing him. Whereas in the Cork Kerry game there was some kind of bumps, and then there was 50 metres. And that's as you say, a 2-pointer, which is very, very harsh. Last thing before we finish up, Philly, Group 3, Down and Monaghan will face off, and a winner kind of tops the group clash. Down, for a lot of people, kind of the surprise team, probably wouldn't have seen a lot of them. Am I right in saying you would have seen them BBC? Donegal. So they beat Louth by a point. I want to give Adam Crummins a shout out for his block on Tommy Dernan to seal that victory. Just coming kind of a blindside. It was a brilliant way to finish the game. But what can you tell us about Down? Because all of a sudden they're 1 win away against Monaghan, who have been moving well, but could definitely win that game, I'd say. And all of a sudden they'd be in the quarterfinals, and a lot of people probably wouldn't be that familiar with them.
Yeah, well, I suppose where the journey they've been on over the last couple of seasons, Laverty has wanted them to kind of get up to be competing in Ulster. There's no doubt about that, but they're still not there. But they're closing the gap, and he would say he's openly said it after games, particularly the Donegal game, that they're not far away from closing the gap. But they need to progress. They've done well in the Tailteann Cup, but they need to progress a little bit more. They probably need a few more younger bodies coming through. They've got good quality. They, like you've mentioned about other teams, they're well coached. They look well coached, and they've got a couple of good scoring forwards. Pat Haven's a very good target man for them. Comes out very similar to these players that we see a lot. Aidan O'Shea, Murphy, that plays inside, comes out as well. And then they've got kind of industrious players, the likes of Brannigan and stuff like that. But they need, and they have, like Mayo, they've got players coming from deep. And in midfield they can cause you problems if they have they go at you in terms of their running game. Beating Louth, I think, was a big step forward for them. I do think, Louth Ger has come out and said, look, they've had a bit of a hangover from winning the Leinster final, and he would have hoped, I'm sure, that wouldn't have, come into the down game. So for them to get that win, and for that final moment to get that block, Dornan, I thought, took a little bit more time than he thought he had, and just they're the ones you dream of as a defender, to get in and get. Actually,
it wasn't actually the only one, and we don't highlight great defensive plays often enough, and the block down is a rarely seen skill in Gaelic football. And we got two last weekend. We got Adam Crimmins' that block down against Tommy Dublin, but in the Meath Roscommon game, Ben O'Carroll about to pull the trigger. A game scoring chance for Roscommon, and Sean Rafferty, the Meath defender, did a similar full-length diving block to prevent Ben O'Carroll from scoring. So they're skills that we don't see often enough, but they deserve to be highlighted.
Because there's the last piece on it. It's bravery, because I watch games, and weirdly enough, I'm like, when I see a fella backing out of a block or could have stretched his body out for a block, I'm infuriated. I'm like, why did you not dive? Like, they're the things that I'd be, if I was a defensive coach, pulling them up on Tuesday going after the game. Why did you not do that? It's not a technical thing. It's a bravery thing. It's a desire, and that shows the character of you as an individual. And there's been, Darren Daly done one for us to win as an All-Ireland. I don't know who done it. Who was the player at Armagh done?
Conor Gormley, wasn't it? Conor Gormley's famous block down, wasn't that?
Gormley was one, but there was one last year. So they do come up, and they could be the difference of winning an All-Ireland or winning something that's really important to the group. And I'd much prefer to be that fella that has the tag of doing that block than someone that pulled out of a block.
Yeah, and that block means that at the very least Down would be hosting a preliminary quarter-final. That's the very least they can hope for. They can obviously win the group as well as if they beat Monaghan. And as Pat said earlier, even though Armagh are true, there's still stuff on the line in that game. So every game, all 8 games in 2 weeks' time, will have something riding on it. I'm actually excited to even see when the fixtures are announced to see what matchups are placed where. And Dublin, Derry and Clonus in particular is one that would be very exciting. But for now, I'd like to thank Philly and Pat for joining me on this Bank Holiday Monday. Pat, hopefully a Tony Award is forthcoming for your Broadway performance today. But if not, we really appreciate you joining us.
Lovely to be on the big stage and meeting you all. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Cheers.